What does it mean to know your identity?
Wow. Great question. I think to me, to know your identity is to really know who you are. But it's not only to know who you are, it actually makes you know who God is. And the biggest thing about us is how or what we know of God. And without knowing God, we can't really know ourselves. And without knowing ourselves, we can't really know God. And so they're really intricately connected. And the more that we know God, the more that we can know ourselves. But we don't have to know God fully to know ourselves. But I think the more we do, the more we will. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I was going to ask you, is there an order to that? We first know God and then we know ourselves?
No, I think he first knows us. And in the knowing us, like he knew us before we were born from our mother's womb, right? He already knew us all the way back then. And he already gave us our identity. And I think we're born into our identity, but then as life happens, I think that we get less and less sure of our identity because it's as if our identity begins getting covered by lies. I have a little drawing that I do. Do you mind if I do that?
Please, I love that.
Okay. Well, part of my identity is that I am a seer.
Okay.
That I see things that aren't there necessarily. I'm an interior designer, and so you kind of see how that plays out in my work, that I can go into ugly situations and places that look hopeless, and I can just kind of look around and see, wow, it could look like this. So I can see what's not there. So it's not like a spooky, eerie, she sees what's not there. Not like that. I just can see, so for this, I can see identity, and my way to share it is through a picture. Super simple. Often my sessions start like this because, again, words without pictures are difficult to, for everybody to understand. But a word with a picture is like, oh yeah, I get what you're saying. So I think this is how we start in our identity. There's the pot, there's a little flower. And of course, we're not all flowers, but I'm just saying that there's an identity. And this identity is who we truly are. And if you look at that, there's no roots yet. That's just you. And I think then in our life, things happen, circumstances go on in our pot. And these circumstances are actually to give us rooting to get back up and become all that we were meant to be. Like it roots us. And then we can grow into who we were really meant to be. But the enemy knows that scenario and knows in order to thwart the picture, make it look different than it's supposed to, the outcome that it started. Because like this is just the beginning of a plant, not what it's going to grow into flourishing. But this is just the little beginning. And so what he does is he takes one of those circumstances way down at the beginning, and instead of it growing a root into that, he grows these really, I think, broad-leafed weeds and fills our pot with these weeds. And then these weeds over decades cover who we are meant to be. Wow. And have you known people that will say, gosh, I don't even know who I am?
Right.
Is it because there isn't that underneath there? No, it's there. It's just that they have lost it behind all the weeds. And these weeds are actually lies, Dan. The weeds are things that have happened that aren't even true, that somehow we just perceived that was the way our little brains thought it.
Right.
But I love in 1 Corinthians 13, it says at the end of a chapter about love, it says, when I was a child, I felt like a child. But now I've grown into an adult and I could put away these childish things. And so for me when we talk about identity, it's like discovering who that is. It's not me giving you an identity. It's not you giving yourself an identity. It's not a community giving you an identity. It's as if it's all revealed and they affirm and you go, oh, my stars, I've always done that. That's who I've always been. And I never even knew, never saw the pattern because it was so disrupted by the lies.
I want you to know straight out of the gate, I am loving this conversation.
Oh, good.
This is going to be a blast. Let me take you backwards a little bit. You work as an interior designer.
I do.
Is that something that you started doing early on? Mm-hmm. Or is this, okay, so you had already stepped into that.
Yes.
Before you had really discovered your identity. Am I understanding that?
Yes, absolutely. However, it was right at a crisis point that I found out that I'd always been an interior designer. It's like, what? How would you discover that? But all the way in 1990, long time ago, I started a design business with my friend. And she and I did it for like 19 years together. We had a blast. It was so fun. I think we laughed more than we did anything else. But everything was easier with her there. And everything was so much more fun with her there. Then her husband had a heart attack. And because of him having a heart attack, she was like, I think maybe I should go back to school, become a nurse so I can have a regular income. Because having your own design company is kind of sporadic, erratic.
Sure.
We stayed busy, but not enough to actually support ourselves. It was always kind of our fun job that we did.
Completely understand that.
Of being a mom, and I was a pastor's wife. And so a lot of other things were going on, but this fit in really well. So when she was leaving it was about 2000, I'm just guessing. It was probably 2006, 7. Gosh,
okay.
You know how you just like, I don't know what.
Yeah, sure.
But she was going to leave and I was like, oh no, I am not going to be able to do this by myself. I think I must get all my inspiration from her. She's the better one of us. Like, I bet it's all about her and I'm just helping her. I don't think I'm really good enough to do this. Hear any lies in there? We don't know that they're lies. They feel really true. So I just am saying me and I'm saying what I believe and I don't recognize any lies in that. Well, I meet Jamie and Donna about that same time. Donna is actually still living in the Middle East. So is Jamie. And he had just visited the States for some business. And he stayed at our house for about 3 or 4 days with my husband talking. And at the end of that, I had a conversation with him and he told me a little bit about this. And he said that his wife would pray with people and help them find their identity and actually just like get rid of a lot of lies that they believe. The identity part wasn't really the major focus quite yet, although it was a big part of it.
Sure.
I know there's a long answer to a question.
No.
Are you okay with that?
You've got me. I'm loving this. Yeah. Right, I'm fully invested.
All right. So, as he tells me that she lives in Amman, Jordan, I'm like, oh, great. Like, there's no way that I'm going to run into her or have lunch with her or ever have this conversation or talk with her. And so I think that Amman, Jordan, and Atlanta, the only thing we have in common is they start with A, right?
Yeah,
there's
right.
Nothing else here. So a couple of weeks later, I'm standing in a house in Minneapolis of people I don't know that I'd gone to a conference. They invited us to come over, my husband and I, to come over for a gathering of people. And so after the event, we went to their house. And at the house, Jamie walks by and I'm like, oh, awesome. I'm glad he's here. And then he looks at me and he goes, how good you met our friend. And it's like, no, I didn't meet anybody. he says, she's the lady standing in front of you. And she was turned around talking to somebody else. Story. The lady ends up to be Donna's friend that does the same thing. Actually, is the one that taught Donna and Jamie how to do all this. And so he introduces me, and I'm kind of like the Ethiopian eunuch. What hinders us from praying right now? And she's like, well, you're here all week. Why don't we just set up a time? And I'm like, no, I want to do it like right now. She said, well, can we eat and then do it? So we went downstairs after we ate and sat on the floor in a basement. And she prayed with me, and my life changed erratically, dramatically, amazingly. I have never experienced anything like it. And I was like 53, and I had been a believer since I was 4. Been in, I can't imagine how many services when your husband's pastor, and when you've gone to every event around the country that you can get to, you know how that is.
Yes,
so
I do.
For me to have this huge change was crazy. But in this praying, I saw that one of my biggest things was fear. And I was sitting in the closet as a 3-year-old, afraid, because my mom and dad had had a big fight.
Okay.
And my dad had gotten so angry that he stood up and he took the edge of the table and he flipped the edge of the table, and all the food came off, dishes were broken, food hit the walls. I was about 3, from the best I can remember. I grabbed my mom's leg and I was holding onto her leg because I was so afraid. And she just told me to run, hide. And I ran and hid in this closet, and I sat, you know how you do with your legs up and your knees around your legs like that. So I was sitting there in this closet, and my friend is praying with me. When is the very first time you remember being afraid? All this comes. And then she says, God, would you show Jody where you are? Well, the closet's dark. I'm alone. I don't see him. And she says, Jody, like theologically, you believe that God's with you every single moment of every single day. So he's there. See if you can find him. So I just sat there and I thought, is this crazy talk? I'm 53 years old, and you're asking me to remember something from when I was 3. And it's like, suddenly, I noticed that there's like a light along the edge of the floor. And I'm saying, I only see this little crack along the edge of the floor. And she goes, sounds like when light is coming from behind a door. And I was like, yes, I think you're right. I think that is it. She said, can you go to that door and open it? Well, then I thought she was really crazy. And I said, are you like new age? Is this okay to do? She goes, I promise you, I'm not going to lead you away from God. I'm leading you toward God. It's like, okay. I just kind of like thought, I'll try. And so in my head, I opened up this door. Dan, there really was a room. And I had totally forgotten it. And for 50 years, I'd been in the closet of fear. There really was a door. And behind that door, my dad had kind of built a false wall for my bedroom, but it was on a porch. And so the rest of the windows were right along this here. And they had a furnace there so that it would heat the room. Yeah. And I went past the furnace and I was playing as the 3-year-old with boxes and turning boxes sideways and wrapping them in fabric and doing all this stuff. And I'm laughing, seeing my 3-year-old self doing that and being the adult watching me going, oh my stars, you're playing decorating.
Right.
My mom comes and she says, calls my name, Jody, where are you? And I say that I'm here. And she said, who are you talking to in there? And I said, oh, I'm playing with God. And she was so petrified by me saying that she said, don't ever tell me that again. I'm afraid that if he is that close to you, he's going to take you away from me. So in her fear, I just silenced myself and was like, but I had not been afraid up to then. And as a matter of fact, being there was a really safe place during that incident.
Okay.
And the furnace kicked on and it would drown out all their fighting. Before that, when I was in the closet, I could hear them hitting each other and things breaking and the mess. So it ended up to be like this little safety place that God allowed me to go into. And I saw that, oh my stars, my earliest, best memories were playing house, decorating with God.
That
and then
is
I felt like, oh shoot, I think I could be an interior decorator without her. I could be an interior decorator with God. He's always been there with me. So it was really a beautiful discovery and something I had no idea how to access and just felt all the lies.
That story of being 3 years old, that was not something you remembered until that moment?
I remember being in the closet. I remember just the fear part of it.
Was that like an active memory that before this moment, when you were 30, like you were able to draw a parallel there or no?
I could never draw the parallel. I just remembered, like if you talked about fear, I probably never even noticed it as the big threat in my life, but it was always my deciding point was, I don't know, that sounds scary. I don't think I can do that. Or that sounds like I'm not sure enough. I couldn't do anything that was scary, which my husband was amazing, not risk taker as in dangerous, but risk taker as in much more adventuresome than me. And so he would always want to do an adventure. And my reaction would always be, I don't know, that sounds really scary, you know?
Right. Yes.
And he coaxed me out of it, but it would be like not in my wheelhouse.
How often are you working with people and there's a clear moment like that where the lies begin?
Pretty much every single person.
And that's often like early childhood?
Yeah. It's usually like I put this pot about this tall because I think of it as being less than 10 years old.
Okay. Yes.
So if it were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. And sometimes really crazy, like sometimes people have even memories of womb memories. I had somebody that I was praying with that their brother, they were a twin.
Okay.
And she could remember being in the womb with the twin.
What I find so interesting about this, and I'm about to speak a little bit out of my depth here, but I find so interesting in that like CBT, so like cognitive behavioral therapy, the sort of defining factor is the childhood and early childhood. And so I find it very interesting that, that is a secular worldview. And we're talking about these Christian principles and Christian identity and knowing your identity within God. And we're still looking at the same things. And I just find anytime I see a parallel like that between the two things, I find it very interesting because there are tools here that are really helpful. And maybe we didn't totally miss it with, traditional therapy.
I think when we were just so vulnerable.
Yeah.
There are times even in our life as we get older that we're really vulnerable, that it seems like the enemy is aware of our vulnerability and able to insert himself into some of our places. Like when my husband passed away.
Yes.
I think the very day that he died and I was walking with him out to the hearse to put him in the car, that while I am walking with him, as long as I can be with him, touching him as long as I could touch him, right? Sorry. That as I'm putting him in the car, I think when I turn around and come back in, I think alone, sent by the enemy, comes to live with me and I don't even recognize that it's a lie. So there it is again in a really vulnerable place where you're not aware and you're not thinking about keeping yourself in a clear frame of mind, that the enemy just seeps in and takes advantage of it.
And then therein lies, of course, the opportunity to believe that lie.
Yes. But you know what? Sometimes it's such a good lie that you don't even know that it's a lie. And the lie has been around for so long, and actually nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
And so we just think that the lie is true. So for 5 years, I dealt with that lie, and I am like a lie finder, and I couldn't find it because it looked and seemed true. Like, have you ever heard of anyone saying that alone is a lie? No.
No.
You just accept alone. Matter of fact, I learned another way for me to describe this.
Okay.
Is that when I look through my eyes, it's the REEL world.
Okay.
The real.
Yes.
What if you were taking a picture
Yep.
or a video, that's the real that my eyes see. I can only see in that realm.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
Okay. Well, in that realm, if you looked at my life, videoed me, this video of me, you can look around my room and I am, quote, alone. That's what all of our eyes would agree with. And you would follow me around. I eat alone. I sleep alone. I live alone. I go places alone. I'm alone. You would say she's a widow that lives alone. But that's just the REEL. And I lived by that and didn't know that it was a lie for 5 years until one day I so hated, I can't even describe how much I hated being alone. I'm a with person. I love people. I am the one that was really connected. I'm quietly connected, so I'm not like gregariously wah, wah, wah out there. And people would think that my husband was the one that was and he was great at it, but his natural part was that he liked his quiet time, but he connected great. Where I connect okay, but I love it.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't like my quiet time very well at all, although I'm learning to live with it. But I just thought that alone was accurate. I read in a book a line that said widows dwell with death, in a book by Dan Allender, actually, out on the West Coast. And I slammed the book shut. I hated the line. I threw it across the room, which I'm not a slammer or a thrower, but I just hated it so much because I hated alone.
Right.
And to me, that was like saying that widows dwell with alone.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, what? God, I so hate being alone.
Yeah.
And just like that, I was sitting over here, and right where I'm standing, like right next to me right here, I saw alone be personified, which I had never thought to even look at or ask about. But it was as if God wanted me to see what alone looked like. And it was about 4 feet, 2, 3. It looked like about an 8 or a 10-year-old little girl, and had a big robe with a hood, not like a robe, bathrobe, but a robe like ancient robe. And I saw her and I was just like, oh, poor thing. Like, if I saw alone, I would say, yeah, bless your heart. Like, just come live with me. We don't want you to be alone. I'm alone too. Let's be alone together. Until about that time, I was pitying alone and feeling the acceptance of alone when alone was looking down and her hood went up. And as her hood went up, I saw her face, and she was really like witchy looking, disfigured, ugly, gnarly face. And then it was like, oh my gosh, that's an evil that I could tell was different than an innocent alone. And then I could tell that alone really wasn't alone. Alone is always with. And alone is with all this presence of evil. And it was as if it was standing with a little bag on the floor, like a Mary Poppins bag that was small, but the everything that came out of it was a lot bigger than the bag could hold, like Mary Poppins,
Yeah.
And so the Mary Poppins bag had uns, which were unwanted, unloved, lovable, unbeautiful. I don't think that that's a word, but right. Just anything that that they were all there. And they kind of were this messy factor that came out with alone. So behind alone starts these
things that we clearly correlate to lies.
Yes. And then out came another kind of color shape ones that were the nots, not good enough, not pretty enough, not smart enough, not wealthy enough, not enough reputation, not enough, not. They don't even have to be sensible. They're just there. And they were busy. And then out came another bunch, and they were the twos. And they were too picky, too hard to please, too wacky, just two.
Right.
I can't think of them all.
Too much, just too much.
Too much, yeah. And so they're out. And as they're all out and about, I realized that I kept a super neat house. And in my neatness, I think I was sensing the mess of them, but I didn't know it was them that was what I was sensing.
Yeah.
So I could keep tidy, and still feel it and not figure out somewhere something's not right. So it was an amazing afternoon. I saw that and went, oh my stars, I do not want to live with this or with them. And I know the principle is that I could get rid of them and invite something that I do want to live with. So I said, in the name of Jesus, by the power and the blood of Jesus, alone and everything that's attached to alone. Because alone is attached to a bunch of lies. So alone is actually an entourage. Do you see why I say it's a lie? Because it's not single. It's a bunch. And we have all come to believe that alone is alone.
Yeah.
And we don't even know about all of that that's with it. But I almost think that if you put a picture of alone, here, right behind alone, I have a bunch of these. Let me see if I can just grab some. This looks like a single page, right?
Yep.
And so alone looks like a single. But if you could actually see past it, alone has all these layers behind it, that it's never alone. It's a group. And they're all lies. And they're things like shame and fear and guilt and things that you don't want, but you accept, oh, I'm alone. Or, oh, look, I'm going to just go do this alone. Or I'm going to eat alone tonight. So I got rid of alone.
Okay.
And then I knew that if you get rid of something, you have to replace it. And the replacement was what would I like to have? Wow, I know. Let's have Trinity come in its place, right? Let's have Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, which is always present. But I think that because the alone was almost in my eyesight all the time, that I couldn't see past it to actually see that Trinity was already here. But I welcomed Trinity and said, you come, you fill my house. And lo and behold, if Trinity doesn't have a bag as well. And the Trinity bag, I'm sure you can guess what comes out of it. Love and joy and peace and gentleness and kindness, beauty, forgiveness, gentleness, just all the things that you'd want to live with. And now I live altogether different.
Was that an active invitation to welcome the Trinity in?
For me, it was like getting rid of that. And I knew that you can't get rid of something that you don't replace it with. And I just thought, like, what would be the best thing I could replace it with? And for me, Trinity just pops into my head because I have a whole nother story about Trinity and how I discovered the Trinity and how the Trinity became real to me. So all of these things are like a little on the weird side. I'm not sure how other people receive these, but for me, because they were over time and not just one story after another from one lady that's like, is she for real?
Right.
But for me, it was like this discovery of all of these, and they were beautiful and welcoming and wanted and desperate.
Yeah.
Like I needed them.
Yeah.
I needed truth in my life. And so as they come in, you know, when truth comes in, you know, when it's here because it sets you free. And the freedom that I felt was just amazing. So every time truth replaces a lie, you get a little freer, a little freer, a little more free.
And this, in a nutshell, would be your work as a coach. You're replacing lies with truth.
Yeah. And for them, it's different lies and different ones. Sometimes I share my stories, and sometimes I only get to share one in a whole hour.
What does the process of replacing a lie with a truth look like?
Well, it's a really beautiful process. Sometimes it's more simple, and sometimes it's has some steps to it. At that time, that day, it was the simplicity. I think God saw my heart, knew what was going on. I said to get out, and it got out. And I think it kind of once in a while at night will press its nose up against my windows.
Sure.
My son lives next door, and they have a dog.
Okay.
And the dog will come over and press its nose up against my window.
Yeah.
And sometimes they have kids with their kids, and the kids will come over and kind of peer in like that. And I can imagine almost that alone does that. It's like, you're alone. I'm coming in. You want me to come with you? And it's like, no, I don't want you. I don't ever want you. I don't ever want you part of my life again.
Right.
So I'm able to keep it away. But that day, I just said for it to go. Sometimes, Dan, the lie has been there for so long for people and has been so closely interwoven. Can I show you another illustration?
Please. Please do.
Okay, now this one is not a drawing and it's not a picture, but it is right here. So when I was a little girl, it was way back when we still had beauty pageants on television. I liked them as a little girl. And those ladies were so beautiful to me. You know, like you're 6, 7, 8, 10 years old, and you're looking at those ladies and just thinking, oh, if only one day I could be that beautiful, right? And then my favorite part was when they had that sash over their clothes, and I guess maybe the sparkle and the whole thing, and just it saying Miss Wisconsin is where I grew up.
Okay.
And so all my states around, Miss Minnesota and Miss Michigan, you know, like I'd always wonder which one of them would win.
Yeah.
And pick out which one I thought was the prettiest, you know how you do. But what I loved is that they wore those and they would stand so tall and such great posture. And they were so proud of their title. It's like, oh, I wish I could have that one day. But my sister gave me a different title. Not Miss Family, not Miss anything. She called me dumb and ugly.
Okay.
And so she labeled me with dumb and ugly. And along with the labeling of dumb and ugly, there were multiple layers to that.
Yeah.
That also lies hardly ever come in ones.
Okay.
They come in a bunch at a time, as many of them as can possibly get together, I think. All I have here is a couple. But along with every lie, there's a voice attached to the lie. And if there's a lot of voices, a lot of lies, then there's a lot of voices. So here it is. I'm dumb and ugly. And the voices that go with it say, you're too dumb. You're too ugly. You can't do that. You're not good enough. You're not as pretty as. You're not as smart as. You're not going to make it. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to ever be anything. So these voices are always attached to this lie. I told you already that there was the lie of fear. I kept these labels until I was 53 when I met Jamie and Donna, and they told me how to get rid of them. Because I didn't know that we could get rid of them. I didn't know that they weren't actually part of me. It was almost like I felt like they were tattooed into me, that I couldn't peel them off. I didn't know that it was just something that I wore that I received as a little girl. Because my sister was 10, I was 3. She said, I thought she was old and smart, pretty and smart.
Totally.
And she, being prettier and smarter than me, told me that I was dumb and ugly. And instead of wearing this like proudly, it's with shame and it's not lightweight and it doesn't fit. Right. So it's really heavy. And if you can imagine it having barbed wire with it, and there you are carrying it, and it hurts you every time it's said. Yeah. Every time somebody refers to it, or you hear that voice saying you're dumb and ugly, it just it breaks you and hurts you over and over and over. Right. 50 years.
Right.
5 decades of not knowing how to get rid of that. And so when they told me how to get rid of it, it was so ingrained in part of me that they gave me a process that I had never heard and never knew was possible either. Okay. So they said, I want you to choose to forgive your sister. And so that kind of begins the loosening of this. And is I choose to forgive. And then they said, Jody, I want you to close your eyes and get a picture of Jesus' body on the cross and tell me when you can see that. I was like, took me a minute.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at seeing. So I saw, and it was just like probably from a Sunday school paper kind of picture in my head that I saw it in color. And Jesus' body is all broken open and bleeding, and he's on the cross, right? And then they said to take this lie off of me. And when the lie comes off, the voices stay with it, and they go because they can never be attached to me. Voices only can be attached to lies. The enemy can only be attached to a lie. And so then take that and put that into the wounds of Jesus. Well, even this being this size, if I say to put this into the wounds of Jesus, you're like, oh my word, I don't know. That's pretty big to get into a body. And I just don't think I can do that. And so they said, God, would you show her how big is this enormous weight to me? How big is that to you? And just like that, it goes into like being this big. Well, now, can I put that into the wounds of Jesus?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I went over and I put it into the wounds of Jesus, and I saw his blood cover over it. It was because it says in Isaiah, by his wounds, we're healed. That he was wounded for our transgressions, that he was bruised for our iniquity. In 1 Peter, it says, who his own self bore our sin in his body on the tree. So often I think, Dan, we get it wrong that we say, take this to the cross, and we see the wooden cross, and we put it into a wooden cross. Do you know the wooden cross can't take this? Wood can't penetrate. You can't put this into wood. But you could put this into Jesus' body, which is why I think it was so broken open, why it was torn apart for us. So it just makes so much sense to me that you put it in, his body and blood covers it. And then we're healed. Where we were carrying those wounds, it's gone. My husband, before I knew him, when he was 10 months old, he got polio. He was one of the last victims in the United States to get polio. And at the time, they put these big metal braces on both of his legs. And then he wore those braces all the way up through high school on one of his legs. And he said that even though it was on the outside of his pants, the way that the metal, as you would grow, would rub that pant leg and make you have blisters and bruises and big sores, you know what I mean, from the braces, because it was holding you up. And I think it's kind of like our lives brace around us and hold us up. And we brace our own self with these lies, but they're painful and they don't fit and they're not for us. But when we get to get rid of them, again, like when I said, whenever you get rid of a lie, you get freedom. You can imagine when my husband actually got to take his braces off, he had surgery and had a muscle transplant, then he got freedom. And so the lies that would be stuck on me and holding me back and making me talking, don't do that, you can't do that, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not smart enough, you can't do any of this, that all of that would hold you back. And when you get rid of it, you're free. And then one part of, once you give it to him, then he gives you in exchange, he takes your lies and then he gives you beauty for your ashes.